Hey Laura, how are you today? I am so excited for today. Do you want to say who it is? Do you want to say who our guest is?
I'm not going to say who our guest is. We always allow them to introduce themselves. What I will say as a spoiler is it's somebody I've known for a very long time, so I'm very excited. They are a key academic in the world of child online safety and digital rights. It's going to
Yeah.
be quite an interesting discussion on something that we haven't really touched on much before.
Yeah, a lot of thinking about what rights children have, what it means for them to be allowed into in the digital world, and how to manifest their own lives and autonomy and agency through digital tools.
Definitely. And I think knowing this person, I reckon people are going to come out of this conversation feeling pretty confident in the future if we leave it in kids' hands, as long as we put all the safeguards in place.
Well, let's get to it. Our guest is Professor Amanda Third, and we're going to ask you to introduce yourself. Would you please?
Thanks, Jordan. Hi, my name's Amanda Third. I'm professor at Western Sydney University, where I co-direct the Young and Resilient Research Centre. Is that enough of an introduction?
Yeah,
No.
that was a fantastic introduction.
That's a pretty good introduction, Amanda. So, we've known each other for quite a long time. I think at least 8 years now. And in that time, we've worked on some really massive projects. Just to name a few, the UN Digital Rights of the Child, which we're definitely going to dig into, and the Global Kids Online Research Project. And they've had such a massive impact on the well-being and safety of kids and teens and adolescents online. We're going to focus on those as some of our discussion. Let's start with a really big one. So, the United Nations Digital Rights of the Child. That's a really huge thing. Can you tell us a little bit of the background and where your work kind of cut into that? What was the goal?
Yeah, so that was probably a real career highlight for me. In that this was a big project to really try to ensure that the rights of children could be realised in online spaces as they are in offline spaces. So it was about taking the Convention on the Rights of the Child and really reinterpreting that, updating the Convention for the 21st century, thinking about what we needed to do, whether that was as governments or as private enterprise or civil society, to really ensure that children could not just be safe online, but really maximise the benefits of digital technology for realising their rights. So so it was a really long process. It took us about 5 years from proposing that there should be one of these general comments to the moment where we finalised it and it was adopted formally by the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. But it was a really great process, and I think the result is that we now have a general comment on children's rights in relation to the digital environment, which guides states to tell them, how to apply the convention to ensure that children are safe in the digital age.
Tell us some of the specific things in it. Some things that might surprise our listeners who haven't read anything about it. They've probably listened to our previous podcast and know a little bit, but maybe they don't. So could you tell us a little bit about like what it says?
Yeah, I can. I can. Well, so it's 10,700 words precisely. So it's a nice, concise text for sort of a legal instrument, right? And what it does is it talks about all the kinds of different rights that children have. And then how to ensure that those rights can be respected, protected, and fulfilled. So children under the Convention on the Rights of the Child have, roughly speaking, three kinds of rights. There are provision rights, which are about the things that are fundamental to a child's life, a child's capacity to, grow and survive and develop. Then we have protection rights, which is about, really making sure that children have the best possible opportunity to live a life that is free from harm. And then we have participation rights, and this is the wild part of the convention, if you ask me, because literally what the convention stipulates is that children have civic and political rights that are almost like, well, they are like the rights that adults are entitled to, and their participation rights are kind of, the convention's kind of quite radical. It's participation rights that distinguish the Convention on the Rights of the Child from previous child declarations previous declarations of children's rights. This is turning into a very rambly answer, Jordan. Let me start again. All right. So, what is particular about? What was the question? What's particular, or what is in the comment? That's right. So, General Comment 25 on children's rights in relation to the digital environment basically takes a look at all of the different rights that are stipulated by the Convention on the Rights of the Child and thinks about, how we really activate those in the digital age. Under the Convention, children have three broad categories of rights. The first category is around provision, which is all about the basic fundamental things we need to make sure are in place so that a child can survive and develop and grow. They also have protection rights, which are about protecting them from all different kinds of harm that might eventuate. And they have participation rights, and it's the participation rights that get me most excited. The participation rights that are stipulated in the Convention give children fundamental rights to participate in civic and political life. It grants them rights that are equivalent to those of full citizens, right? Those adults who are defined by law as the people who constitute the citizenry. And they stipulate that actually to really fulfill children's broader rights, you have to be speaking with, listening to, and responding to children's own sense of what they need, what they desire, and what they aspire to.
Yeah, I love that, because one of the things that really fascinates me about your work is the participatory approach to research, and I would love if you would, which obviously is connected to everything you're saying. Well, maybe it's not obvious to everyone who's listening, so maybe you could tell us a bit about first what participatory research is, how it shows up for you, and how that connects to digital wellness. I mean, or digital rights. Like, we don't really think about participatory. Well, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for that. But before we do that, Jordan, can I just pick you up on one little thing, which I think is kind of important, right? And it's this question of digital rights. I think we need to be really careful when we talk about children, what the general comment secures for children, because whilst a really important part of the general comment is securing rights for children in digital spaces, right? So thinking about what it means to be safe online, but also what it means to really participate fully in the digital environment, in those online spaces. But I want us to really push ourselves to think about the value of this general comment more broadly, because actually what the general comment is trying to set up is a way for us to think about how the digital might support children to realise their rights across online and offline spaces, to really open up a sort of a radical vision of what technology might offer for children. And that to me is really exciting, and it's not a question that we often think enough about. But back to your other question, which was, sorry, is that okay that I just went rogue there? But what is participatory research, and what's the value of it? So participatory research with children is about taking seriously the idea that children should be agents in conducting research, generating insights, interpreting those insights, and then wielding them. So the idea is that it's about thinking beyond doing research about or on children, and really how you do research with children, thinking about them as partners in the research process. And this is it sounds lovely in principle, but it's actually quite a difficult thing to achieve in practice, because of course the minute that you begin to do anything with children as an adult, you're activating a whole set of power dynamics that get in the way of all kinds of good things, right? So it's a constant challenge inside the participatory research process to really stay attuned to those power dynamics and think creatively about how to work with them, subvert them, and really sort of open up spaces, I guess, for children to participate meaningfully. Yes.
What is it? What does that? I mean, if we were to get really specific about it, what does that bring the seeing research on children rather than with children, right? What is the what do we get that's different? Do we get more accuracy? Where do we get accuracy? Where do we get less accuracy? Where all the questions.
Yeah. So, well, good. Thanks, Jordan. You need to just pull me down to earth here and get me to stop talking abstractly and more concretely. So what does it give us? I think what participatory research really gives us is a way to make sure that the solutions that we design for children really resonate with children and are positioned for the best possible uptake and impact. I think working really closely with children can supercharge what we're able to achieve in terms of not just protecting them, but actually leveling them up and enabling them to really maximise the value of being online and using digital technologies. I think too, and this is something I think we really underestimate. It makes research really fun, and that's
I love that.
But it's we really underestimate it, because when you're having fun, you're in a much more creative space. You're much more able to kind of think about things from different angles and generate new ideas, and it's just way more, to put it in the words that a teenager recently used with me, it's way more vibey, right? It's kind of like you can just like do more stuff. So I think I think all of us adults who are involved in designing the digital world for children really need to make time to take our shoes off and stand in the grass and remember what it's like to be a child. Come down to street level in order to level up, right? I think in a nutshell that's what I would say it offers us.
I love that, Amanda. We've recently been working on a project together on a different theme, and one of the key findings that came out of it was about the thing that we're all missing, whether we're, a good platform who work with young people all the time, or academics or other people in this space, NGOs in the space, is youth participation, but also youth-led product design is so vital. And we all talk about it and we all want it, we're willing it, but actually making it happen feels scary. But I feel hopeful we're going to start seeing some stuff in that space. I also just wanted to pick up on, how you were talking about young people being given that platform, that opportunity to go and do the things that they want to do online. We just see this political activism from young people, which is absolutely incredible. And it's the first time, I would say, particularly in the online space, where we've seen this real movement happening. And it feels a little bit like the hippie revolution, which I'm quite a fan of. But yeah, Godspeed, kids. I think you're going to be fine. And hopefully we will all enable you on that journey. Anyway, I would like to move on just very briefly to talk about the Global Kids Online project. So we, on our previous series, had one of your good friends, Dr. Sonia Livingston, came and joined us, and we talked about EU Kids Online and her participation in that, and a little bit about Global Kids. Amanda, obviously you're based in Australia. I think, we've briefly touched on that, but what was your experience like, again, working with the youth participants, and any findings, takeaways and stuff that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I've been really, really lucky to have a role in Global Kids Online as an expert advisor, and really, I guess I've come into that entity as as someone who brings some child participation expertise, and having talked to a lot of children over my, do I want to say those numbers out loud? 15 plus years doing this work. I have learnt a lot, and so that's kind of how I came into that entity. And I think, what's really lovely about the Global Kids Online initiative is that it's trying to generate evidence in places where we don't have the evidence to drive policy and programming. And this is a really big challenge for the sector around the world, especially when we reflect on the fact that 1 in 3 users of the internet is a child. That's a huge number of users. A lot of those children are coming online as mobile first users, so that meaning that they don't connect via a desktop, or they connect via a mobile phone, and that comes with different kinds of constraints and capabilities. But also many children are coming online in communities where digital technology is a really new thing, and they don't always have the cultures of support around them, because the adults in their lives are really rapidly getting up to speed too. I mean, I think about, Australia is supposed to be a reasonably advanced technological adopting country, right? I'm sure there's a technical term for that. It's not that. Like we're thought of as early adopters, and I even think about my own experiences as a parent trying to keep up to speed and be a good parent to a child who's growing up in the digital age, and I find it really challenging. So I think there are those kinds of challenges are accentuated in many parts of the world, and so we really do need a bunch of evidence to help drive that. I think also what's lovely about the Global Kids Online initiative is that it's trying to generate quantitative evidence, but also qualitative evidence. And I think this is really super important because, our world talks in numbers. Numbers mean a lot in our world. Things get done because of numbers. But often numbers don't tell us everything, and it's really important to drill down into children's experiences and really understand why they make the choices that they make, why they do things, what they're able to do online and what they're not able to do online. To really understand the why behind the numbers. So
and what do you understand so far?
Jordan,
What's the why
you like
behind the
to,
numbers?
you like to ask a big question, don't you? So, well, look, I've developed a bunch of methods that to enable us to, I guess, talk with children in a deep way at scale. We call this distributed data generation, and this is about kind of developing a workshop-based method. Typically, the workshops are like 5 hours long, and we then work with child-facing organisations in different countries to run workshops with children, gather their insights, and then we have a process where we analyse that data in conjunction with those child-facing organisations, and through this process we've learnt a lot. I think if I think about the things that children say are the biggest challenges to them, number one are the access issues. We know that there are still really obstinate digital inclusion challenges that are impacting the ways that children engage online. These range from disrupted internet connectivity, old devices or hand-me-down devices with batteries that don't work, all those sort of typical hardware issues, but also things like the parents making rules that restrict their access and really limit children's capacity to engage meaningfully. The attitudes of the adults in their lives, one thing that they highlight often is that teachers don't really know enough about the digital world and how to bring it to life at school and value it and all of these sorts of things. They also say that adults, and you've got to love kids. They're so wonderful when they get going. But they say things like, adults say, on the one hand, put your devices away, do this, do that. And then on the other hand, they just flagrantly, break their own rules. And they're not role modeling in the ways that we would like them to.
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of what we might think of as quite valid critiques of the ways that their digital technology is spoken about. But they also, and this is the thing that I really love the most, is they have this incredible enthusiasm and optimism for the ways that digital technology can benefit them. They really do see digital technology as an enabler for them, for the most part, and they've got these really wonderful visions of how technology can help to unite the world, how it can make it a more just and good place to be. But they're also calling on governments, on company platforms, on all the adults in their lives in general, to really make sure that these spaces can be those enablers, and that the risks of harm are really minimised. Discrimination, hate speech, misinformation, privacy breaches, these are the things that really bother children, and they're really looking for us to step up and find some solutions.
Amazing piece of work. I'm sure that everyone involved in it's incredibly proud. Certainly every time the reports come out, I know I dig in, and I'm always really fascinated with how things have kind of changed over a period of time. And certainly globally, it feels, as much as I think lots of people are suffering a little bit with that lack of access that you mentioned, but actually it's probably leveled out at a global level, whereas the countries that saw themselves as way beyond in the past maybe have now dropped down a little bit. So that's quite interesting. But,
yeah, and I think, Laura, that's really true. And I think, often it's really easy for us to talk about young people in the global north as the most connected generation, etc., etc. And we often forget, actually, there's incredible diversity in the ways that children engage with technology. Some have much more access than others. And really, some of the divisions within countries are quite stark, and so digital inclusion is still a massive challenge for us. Not just in low income settings, but in high income settings as well.
Thank you. So Amanda, amazing work that you've done already, and I'm so happy that I've worked with you on some of these projects. What's next? What's your next big focus? What are you working on for the next 5 years? What's your plan?
Well, I think I'm really excited about the fact that there's great enthusiasm about child participation in research, but also child participation in design and business and all of these sorts of things. And so I'm really keen to lend a hand in trying to develop the necessary resources to bring child participation to life across a range of different settings. I think, if we can really do that, we're really setting ourselves up to support children now, which is super, super important, but also into the future. And obviously, as those children grow, if we can nurture children's sense of how to use technology creatively to create a better and more just world, then we really can. I think we can really be hopeful for our futures. So this is something that I really want to kind of dig into more and take forward. But I think really, you were saying earlier about how children are using, that there's almost this moment, this kind of, I think you referred to it, Laura, as a hippie moment, that, I'm really excited about the possibilities that digital can offer for children in conceptualizing and crafting the world that they're part of. I think I've been really amazed at the kind of the real buzz around the Fridays for the Future movement, which of course children have relied deeply on digital technology, social media in particular, to identify who their collaborators can be, and to bring about this kind of global call for action on climate change. And I think this says something really, really interesting about the contemporary moment. And I think this is kind of best explained by a quick. Will you indulge me in a quick detour, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but
Don't
but
feel
let
that way.
but let me. But I think if we think back, there's this quirky anthropologist, Benedict Anderson, who talks about. He was interested in the idea of the nation and how the nation as a concept came into being, right? Because we all think of nations as natural, but they're not. They're complete, they're fabrications or constructions of the human imagination. So, and indeed they can be quite problematic, but let's not go there for now. But one of the things that he talked about was the importance of the newspaper, of print media culture, for our capacity to imagine ourselves as members of this thing called the nation. He talks about the way that, back in the 19th century, when you sit down and you open up the daily morning newspaper, you participated in a ritual which encouraged you to project yourself into this idea of the nation, right? You sat down to read the national newspaper thinking of yourself as, in my case, an Australian reading the newspaper. I'm not sure if we had newspapers back then, but anyway. And he sort of talks about, the real power of the mediums that we engage with to encourage us to think in particular kinds of ways. And I think this is really interesting. If if you bring that lens to this question of the Fridays for the Future movement, we've got this really amazing thing going down. Actually, digital media are enabling children, for the first time, I think, in history, to identify as a political constituency of children. Right? This is the first moment in history where children have been able to connect with one another and to imagine themselves as a group that is capable of enacting change at scale. And I think this is massive, massive certainly for the climate change, the climate justice movement, but also for many other things too. Imagine, children calling for an end to hunger, children calling for peace. There is so much that could happen as a consequence of this possibility. And I'm really excited about that.
Me too.
That's very exciting and fascinating. I wonder, with that in mind, do you think there's things that we I don't know who the we is, whether the we is researchers, tech industry, academics, policy makers, are there things we're not focusing on that we really should be focusing on?
Yeah, Jordan, look, my biggest gripe is that we're not imaginative enough about the way that we think about children's relationship to technology. It's very true that there are lots of risks of harm associated with children engaging online, but we have got to, first of all, find ways to protect children online, and also, but at the same time, think in a kind of maximal way about what the possibilities really are. We want to be teaching children to grab a hold of this technology and think with it, work with it to do, things that we haven't thought of yet. I think it's really easy for us to get stuck in our thinking about what those possibilities are, and I think we need to enable children to, a chance at thinking differently. So, to my mind, we really need to open up those spaces.
I love that so much, Amanda. I can't wait to see what that future might look like, and hopefully it's something we can all get behind.
Thanks so much, Laura. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Into the Digital Future. We hope you had as much fun listening as we had talking. For links and resources about any of the ideas, projects, or initiatives we discussed on this episode, please visit the CUNY Center website at cunycenter.org/future.
Into the Digital Future has been brought to you by Roblox and the Joan Gans CUNY Centre at Sesame Workshop. Your hosts are Jordan Shapiro and Laura Higgins. Matt Clark is our audio editor and production coordinator. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any episodes on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and more.